5 things millennials agree on abortion. Hey everyone, I'm Kristan Hawkins, and welcome to this edition of Explicitly Pro-Life. Today we're going to talk about things millennials actually agree on when it comes to abortion. So we have a special guest with me today. Michele Hendrickson's here.
Hi, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, if you have followed Students for Life, you've probably seen Michele around. Michele is our Eastern Regional Director. When did you start with Students for Life, by the way?
It's all very fuzzy because I just sort of started working for you without actually officially working for you.
Yes.
5-ish years ago.
Yeah, that's sort of how it happens.
Yeah.
We just kind of like, so we're going to make this like a full-time gig now. Michele, before we get into the 5 things millennials agree with about abortion, which is like, really exciting and I think might be illuminating for some of our listeners or viewers if you're watching on YouTube. How did you get involved in the public? I don't even know if I've heard your story. Like, how did you get, because you were a teacher.
Yep.
And you left your career as a teacher.
I resigned from teaching to join the Students for Life team.
Yes. So how did you get involved in the pro-life movement?
Yeah, I was always pro-life. It all began with needing to do some research in high school for a speech. I saw what abortion was. It was very black and white to me, and I was anti-abortion from the beginning. But just like most Americans, I didn't really know what to do with it. Students for Life wasn't really prominent when I was in school, so I didn't have anywhere to connect.
How old are you?
I'm your age.
Oh, we're the same age?
Yeah, we're the same age.
Okay,
Numbers are fun.
Okay, yeah.
We're millennials, just barely, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Well, and depending on the demographer, there's a new thing now, like millennials. Some people will say it's 1980 to like 2000. But that's like a huge freaking gap.
Yeah.
Because you think about like those of us born in the early 80s, we had like Oregon Trail and like
we had
we
Oregon
didn't have
Trail. That was
AOL Instant Messenger until we were like late middle school,
well, so
and then like
that's
people
part
during
of my
1990s
story.
are like different, totally raised in a
Yes.
totally different world than we were.
Yes, that's part of my story. Being able to back then Google what abortion was, but they didn't have Google.
Yeah.
Do you remember Jeeves? Ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves.
I asked Jeeves what abortion was, and unlike Google, they don't filter things, so it was just a picture right away, and it was heartbreaking. And so that just solidified my beliefs for me. I had nowhere to put them, and so like most Americans, I just kind of went along life not really knowing what to do about it. And I went to a local Maryland march, and that's where I met Rock for Life and one of our team members, Eric, and got me plugged into that the pro-life movement was a thing, and that not only was it a thing, you could work in it and make a difference and fight this injustice. And I was all about it, and I jumped in.
So you were like the top like Rock for Life volunteer, going to Christian music festivals.
I went the following week. He said, "You want to do something about it? Come with me to a festival next weekend." All right. And here I am with my full-time job, and my son was 1 at the time, and I just kept doing more things.
Lucy, number 2, yes. Okay, so Michele, your role at Students Life, you started out as a regional coordinator, so you started all the groups, help groups locally in the D.C., Maryland area.
I covered Pennsylvania, Maryland, D.C., Virginia, Delaware, and West Virginia.
We came out far away, baby, because now we have a full-time Pennsylvania coordinator.
Yes. Yeah, so that region grew into full-time Pennsylvania, Delaware, full-time Maryland, D.C., Virginia, and now West Virginia is its own thing, too.
Yeah,
so.
West Virginia needs to step its ass up, though, in student activism. I'm Native, so I can say that. So you are but you've been promoted, as most people in Students Life. You hang around long enough, you get like more than like
we get more.
You get lots of titles and more responsibilities. Yes. So now you're Eastern Director, so you manage all of the east of the Mississippi regional coordinators.
It's fuzzy there too, but that's the easiest way to explain it. About 9 regional coordinators, 9 regions.
Okay. So why I asked Michele to come on today is because Michele is really good with having conversations on college campuses, conversion conversations. And one of the things we really try to do at Students for Life when we're on campuses is measure the number of conversations our students and our staff are having when we have our tours every semester. But then also this year, we're actually measuring conversions. Like how many did we move from that linear scale of abortion always, forever, and for any reason taxpayer funded to abortion never? Did we move them closer or further away? But Michele, I think, has a really good gifting of being able to have these conversations on campus. And I think that you have the great personality for it. You have a really good temperament for it.
I'll just let you keep talking.
Yeah. You have a great temperament for it. I'm not so good at these conversations because I tend to get very loud, how do you say, perturbed at stupid people. So
impatient.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes.
So I've been told you can read my face when someone's talking to me that I think is stupid. So I don't have patience. There you go.
There
I don't
you
have
go.
patience for
I
it.
was a teacher. See
There
how
you
that
go.
plays in? If I
Yeah.
can corral 25 third graders, I can do this.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Michele also happens to be one of our resident liberal pro-lifers.
Oh, you're admitting that on the podcast. How exciting.
So Students for Life is unique because we're a secular organization. So we have, we're mostly Christian. We actually have a couple.
Very diverse group.
We've had atheists, agnostics on board. We have a Mormon staffer. I'm really excited about that. But we also politically there's a lot of diversity within the staff. The only thing we kind of require of you to work for us is you have to be with us 100% of the time that
100%.
abortion's always wrong. And then we can disagree about other policies, immigration, whatever. But what I always kind of bring Michele into conversations we have because I can have a hard time seeing it from another side. And that's so important. Like whatever we create at Students for Life or whatever resource, we have to make sure that it's going to appeal to conservative students as well as liberal leaning students and that we can get agreement, because one of the things I think is so fascinating, and there's full millennial warning. I haven't read the book. I've only listened to the TED Talks and read the New Yorker article about it. But there's a professor in New York State, Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a book, The Righteous Mind. And you can Google him on the TED Talks. But he talks about, how political liberals versus political conservatives think and process information differently. He calls it moral foundations theory. And it's so fascinating because it's so hard for conservatives, like when they're trying to like win over and make an argument with your liberal friends, like, why don't you get this? I'm using facts and reason. And it's like, well, it doesn't really matter because they don't really give a shit about what's been done before, like what historically has been done, or even if that's a fact, it's about how you made somebody feel. And so it's about, you've got to like kind of connect emotionally.
There are a ton of dialogue principles that come into play before you can even really get to the heart of the matter. You have to find common ground with that person. You have to build, it's a relational thing that you have to be able to build.
And so that was one of the things of like when you're trying to win over, and that's our goal at the pro-life movement, is like we want to convert regardless of whether you're a political liberal or political conservative. We need to be able to have conversations, to have resources on campuses that reach across the aisle. And so I always bring Michele into a lot of conversations like, so how does Michele feel about what we just created? Like,
that might give some signals.
Yes. Does Michele hate what I'm saying? Or does she not? And we don't always agree, but I think I wanted to have you on because I want to talk about, regardless of where politically a millennial may be, there's actual broad agreement in a lot of places when it comes to abortion. And I want to go through we had a poll that we released this January at Students for Life through our Institute for Pro-Life Advancement. And the way I wrote the poll was very strategic with it because I find a lot of times when you do polls on abortion, like if you're like, if you're pro-life or pro-choice, it's too general. Yeah. People are like, pro-choice. But then if you ask them like, hey, do you support Roe versus Wade? Yeah, I support Roe versus Wade. Okay. Do you know what Roe versus Wade is?
There's no context, so they have no idea what they're answering, and it sounds right.
So I wrote it so we could ask like, how do you feel about Roe? Okay. Now let me tell you what Roe is. And then re-ask the question. And it was shocking. And a lot of people, I think, were like, oh my gosh, these numbers were fantastic. So I wanted to go over some of like the 5 points we saw broad agreement amongst millennials on this issue. And then kind of go and use your expertise of like the conversations that you're having on campuses and how you're able to kind of use these points to get people who may come up to you angry when they see our Life After Roe display or abortion is violence display, and how you get them to move.
Yes.
I think a lot of people will get a lot out of this conversation.
It's been a very successful tour so far.
Yeah, so Michelle's talking about our Life After Roe tour. That's our fall tour. So my fall speaking tour is Make Abortion Illegal Again, which is the more controversial thing. Like, she's like, uncomfortable, controversy. But on campus, the fall tour is Life After Roe. It's the more positive name. Yeah. But it's the same principle. What I'm saying on campus, my speech is what our campus tour is. It's the same thing, just I have a more controversial sounding name so more people come out to hear me.
Well, and that's what you want for the speaking
Exactly.
tour. So that makes sense.
So, but we're all aligned with the same talking points, but we're seeing a lot of good conversions on this issue. So before we start, let's define millennials because it gets kind of hairy sometimes. Millennials are right now, depending on the demographer, birth 1982 on. We also have Generation Z. Generation Z, the oldest Generation Z are sophomores in college this year. So we're starting to kind of monitor millennial versus Generation Z to see what the changes are. But so millennials are even getting older. They're like college grads. I mean, so even when we say millennials, we are kind of saying Generation Z, just younger people in college. But I know older people, all they hear is millennials, and that's,
You just think young people.
Yeah, but it is actually different. And when we did our polling, we did, I think it was 18 to 24. So we actually had it was more Generation Z and a little Generation Y, millennials. So just be careful when you hear those terms. We haven't started seeing the big changes with Generation Z
At least not on this issue.
Not on this issue. Know? I've been told it should get better because there should be I've been told Generation Z is less snowflakey.
I guess we'll see.
We'll see. I haven't noticed it, and I've been kind of watching to see if it changes. We definitely saw a change when millennials kind of fully stepped up. We have seen a change when we started Students for Life in 2006 to where in 2019, and what student groups like to do, what the hell they like to talk about.
It took a lot of training, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of encouragement. I think Students for Life in our programs have a lot to do with that, just being able to, I mean, you've seen exponential growth over the years, and exponential growth in our regional coordinators, having that relational touch with the student groups and what they're able to provide them. So we've just seen training over the years, they skyrocket what they're able to do.
So we're always kind of reevaluating how we're talking about the issue, how we're presenting it, what we're doing, because we have to kind of flow with the generation and where trends are going. Or if we're not relevant, no one's going to want to have us on campus. So the first thing we found in the poll we did was millennials want limits on abortion. So 7 out of 10 people that we polled supported limits on abortion, like parental notification, limiting abortions later in pregnancy, like at 5 months when the child is proven to feel pain. They oppose government funding of abortion. Only 7% of the millennials we polled said that they actually supported the position of abortion in all 9 months for whatever reason taxpayer funded, which is the official position from the Democratic National Committee, by the way. It's actually in their platform. Do you think, Michele, like when you're talking to students, do you think students even know this is the platform of the DNC?
I don't think they're aware whatsoever. And so we did a tour like that during the election year.
During 2016,
Yep. And we were able to walk out each party's platform, and starting with that open-ended, what are your thoughts on this? And I think one of my favorite displays in partnership with that is our human rights display, where you're just seeing the age of the baby from conception to birth, and you're asking, when do equal rights begin? And so you bring over that person, and they're looking at this scale, and nobody, like everyone realizes what we're getting at, right? And they're seeing that, okay,
like,
if I vote for, look, it's a baby, and they're having that moment, and they're voting somewhere in the middle or based on development or realizing maybe their true vote is earlier. And then you're breaking their hearts over the fact that, well, abortion is legal through all 9 months. And then you're sharing that, yes, that is the Democratic Party platform, and they just don't believe you. And they're starting to look it up on their own phones. Oh, that can't be. And there it is in black and white. They don't like that.
They don't like it. It's fascinating to me how left the Democrats have gone like this summer and like supporting abortion and wanting to repeal Hyde, because it's like, well, even young people aren't with you. Like they don't want abortion for any reason all 9 months.
Exactly. You can do that display on some of the most liberal campuses, and you will only have a very small number of votes, a handful of votes, where someone's putting their sticky note. We vote with little Post-its. They're putting their sticky note on birth. And often the 3 people who did that, they ran up to the display, they stuck it on there, and they ran away.
They didn't
even want to talk. Exactly. They don't want to have to face it. If someone's bothering to dialogue with us, they're going to go down the scale, and they're going to realize that their honest position is a lot lower.
Yeah, I mean, so honestly, like if you want to convert like some of your Democrat friends, and I would say just show them the DNC's platform. And I think we do these tours every semester. So every semester it's different, and we always have themes. So like this semester's Life After Roe. We're thinking about the theme for the spring, but that was the 2016 fall tour. What was it
Cycle
called?
of Corruption.
Cycle of Corruption. Yeah,
because you followed the dollars.
Yeah. And we just said, here's the actual platforms: the Republican National Committee, the DNC. I think we had like a Green Party platform, Libertarian, and then we showed the money and politics from the abortion industry, and no one liked that. Even the Democratic,
it's dirty.
Even the pro-abortion students didn't like that, right?
That'll help them see that and shift when it comes to the abortion lobby and Planned Parenthood. And that's where we're able to make some gains in exposing the abortion lobby, because they don't, I mean, that's dirty. Everybody, the mushy middle, they want to think of Planned Parenthood as that health clinic.
Yeah.
Well, when you start to uncover, really, you look what's under the hood and seeing where their dollars are really spent, nobody likes that.
Nobody likes that. I think that's totally key, and I think that plays into what we've seen from millennials of like their distrust of big corporate America and corporate greed. When you say, look, like there's 8,000 federally qualified health centers that don't spend any money on lobbying. You have Planned Parenthood's one of the biggest lobbyists in Washington, D.C. that's just committed $45 million in 2020 on the election. And yet they're still saying they need more taxpayer dollars. Like, it doesn't look right. Right. Like,
and you can research that yourself. Millennials are all about Googling it, right? Research, and you can find that out yourself. And they're also about authenticity, right? As much as that we want to maybe diss millennials for different things, they're all about genuine organizations. And as soon as you take 2 seconds to look at Planned Parenthood, you're going to see through that. And millennials see through that pretty fast as soon as we put that in front of them.
There was a quote a few years ago in the Wall Street Journal, and I use it all the time because it was a local abortionist who was complaining about the Planned Parenthood. Okay. And so the local abortionist said, well, they're like the Walmart of the abortion industry, because she was complaining that, Planned Parenthood gets all these taxpayer dollars. Now with the Title 10 change, the Protect Life rule, they're down 60 million, but they're still getting like 400 plus million a year. So they want all this taxpayer dollars. They get subsidized. They get cheaper birth control. They sell it for actually way more than they actually pay for it. So they can actually offer their abortion services cheaper than an independent abortion facility that doesn't get any subsidized money, because they don't have government money paying for the parking lot, paying for the building, paying electricity like Planned Parenthood does. And so these independent abortion agencies hate Planned Parenthood because it's like going to when you go to Costco and you get cheaper gas, right? Yep. Costco's subsidizing the gas price, and they can offer a lower gas price because they're making money off of their members.
And when you expose that kind of business model of it, that's again another point that millennials just don't want any part of that. They start to just realize that Planned Parenthood, those talking points of that they're there to help women, they see right through that.
Yeah, no, and I know on campuses, like our Planned Parenthood tours we do those probably every 3 tours, a Planned Parenthood tour. And we've made actually students become anti-Planned Parenthood before we've made them pro-life.
Yeah, so it depends how you start the conversation or what you're leading with. And for our Planned Parenthood facing displays, that's very often how we start. And it's a question of what we did last spring was, do you trust Planned Parenthood? And, students will come up to you, well, yeah, I trust Planned Parenthood, friendly neighborhood Planned Parenthood, right? And then they take a moment to walk through the display, and they're seeing everything that you just said. Not only that, but how many of their facilities have broken health codes, right? How many health violations? The fact that this business is obviously corrupt and dirty. So we don't need Planned Parenthood. They're superfluous, and we don't want them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's yay. Yay, Michelle. Yay, students fighting. Okay. Okay. The other thing we found, so more millennials, number 2 would be more millennials than not support Roe's reversal. They actually, when they're told what Roe versus Wade is, they don't mind it being reversed. Now, it's not, the big boogeyman, the scare tactic of the abortion industry and what we're going to be hearing leading up to 2020. When we actually told them what abortion is, they didn't mind it being reversed and going back to the states. We said, look, Roe being reversed isn't going to make abortion illegal. It's going to make the decision come local, come closer to you.
Right. And they like the idea of that.
Okay, so how's that going on campuses this fall with the Life After Roe tour?
You're seeing 2 different things play out. And it's very similar to what we saw with the question of, do you trust Planned Parenthood? It's, do you want to see Roe stay, or do you want to see Roe overturned? And you've got a lot of people coming up to you not even knowing what it is or what it means, but it's familiar. It's in the back of their heads. So they're thinking, well, it's precedent. It's what we have now. Sure. But then they walk through the display, and they're realizing that it means abortion through all 9 months. And like we had just covered, millennials don't like that. They do support restrictions and
Yeah.
limits on abortion. So they'd want to reverse it for that reason. Or what we're also seeing is what you said, they want to vote on abortion. They want a say on it. So yes, let's reverse this and take it back to the states. And I want to see a state like Alabama, or even the more liberal students might say, well, I want, at least a choice in the matter. And I would want to see, I would go to the state of that state.
Is that the most convincing argument? What's the most convincing argument that you're seeing with the Life After Roe tour this semester? Is it the disputing the back alley myths that no women weren't dying in the tens of thousands? Is it the extremism of Roe? Like, what is that like? If you could pick like one, because I know our tour has like 3 banners, and you can go. Do we have it on a website somewhere?
Yep.
What's the website?
Life After Roe.
Lifeafterroe.com. Is that it?
I'm like 99% sure. You're freaking me out.
Probably
like,
lifeafterroe.com or .org, but if not, you can probably just Google on our website. Just
Life
search
After
it.
Roe.
So what's like the most convincing argument that you're hearing?
It's the extremism.
It's the extremism.
It's
Okay.
as soon as you're making people aware of not only abortion through all 9 months is legal, but for any reason. As soon as we walk out what health of the mother really means, and that health of the mother can cover,
no one's okay
I'm
with
too
that.
stressed right now, and that it allows for abortions based on gender. It allows for abortions based on just your mental state, or your emotional well-being, genetic, all of those things, or repeat abortion. That's huge. Still with with millennials, that okay, maybe one abortion this one time, but after that we hear that all the time. It's the reason for the abortion, or this idea of like using abortion as birth control. It's this odd dynamic of them wanting this choice, but not crazy, not extreme choice. And they're wrestling with that, and you see them wrestle with that, and then you make them aware, well, Roe allows for that moment, that what you're uncomfortable with, that's happening every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen this before. Of there's like everyone has this queasy feeling in their gut about abortion.
Yes.
And so no one really likes abortion, despite the whole like, what was the people were wearing the T-shirts like I had an abortion, like they were all about shout your abortion.
Yes.
So despite the shout your abortion, those efforts never really take off, because at the end of the day,
it's painful.
99% of people have this queasy feeling about, even if they support abortion. And so when they're told about the extremism, that's something they can't tolerate.
You can't. Exactly. It does not settle. It does not sit well.
I don't understand why Democrats don't get that.
I don't know. I don't think they're hearing. They're not listening. They're not using our dialogue principles.
They're getting the dollars from Planned Parenthood.
They're hearing that a lot louder.
Yeah,
they're not
because
hearing
it's
their
like
own voters.
David Brooks had a really good article. I talk about this all the time. It was 2 years ago in the New York Times, and he's a Democrat. He's a liberal, and he said, "I'm pro-choice. I support women's right to choose. However, if we want to win these Rust Belt states, we have to moderate our stance on abortion. Like, no one is tolerating second, third trimester abortions. Yeah, our party is getting more and more extreme and beholden to abortion industry interest. Like, I honestly, like, if you want to give Republicans a run for your money, Democrats, moderate your stance on abortion. Say, well, we only want abortion in the first trimester. That would give, I think, Republicans more of a run for their money in Rust Belt states, because Democrats could say, we don't like abortion, but there's women who are in crisis or whatever. But now it's just like they're abortion whenever, for any reason, taxpayer
They're
funded.
not hiding behind the extremism because it's what the dollars are paying them for.
It's unbelievable. I'm just like, don't you want to win? Like I
well, they lost my vote a long time ago. So
there you go. You're an independent.
I'm registered independent. Okay. It's a very frustrating little place to be. That I agree with everything else, and especially teaching background. And I'm from the Chesapeake Bay
How do you feel about government
watershed.
healthcare?
I loved your interview on that, Kristan, and it was very eye-opening. Yes, I think there are some issues like that are a little bit beyond me and my intelligence. Anything in the financial realm, I'm like,
that's
that
the thing
sounds
is like
really
I find
tricky.
with, like, liberal leaning pro-lifers is that I always hear like this government run healthcare thing, and I'm like, but I think your intention is good,
exactly,
but the execution of it is going to be terrible.
And as soon as you walk that out, it's kind of an moment. Oh,
I know. I'm less like, I feel like there's a lot more common ground between political left and right in the pro-life movement, because I think the intentions are always the same. But we have different policy prescriptions. But I think a lot of times it's like, well, we in our rush to help, we like want to blow up like the current healthcare. I'm like, no, like hold on for a second.
And
Let's
if we
have discussion.
just talk about it and then we make people
I
aware,
know.
which is why I love what
Why
we do.
can't we just go to
Why
Washington,
can't-
D.C. and
yes,
fix it?
we'll just fix
I know,
it.
I know. Okay. Okay. So, third thing millennials agree on about abortion is the right to vote.
Yes.
So you've already mentioned this.
Yep.
So in our poll we did, which I think was, I've never seen any poll actually ask this question. 65% of millennials said they supported the right to vote on abortion related policy and want a voice in their state. 65%.
So this isn't that their heads are in the ground and that
No,
they're
yeah.
unaware. They're aware and they want to say.
They want to say, I mean, we see this all the time on campuses. When you mentioned earlier about like the human rights tour we take on campuses, we always let students vote. And like everything we try to do when there's semester tours, when we go to these 150 campuses, we do about 150 campuses a semester. We always try to find like a way to have people vote or like give us their opinion.
Give us their opinion.
Yeah.
Yes. Where is your voice in this? You know, there is still change to be made. And clearly, when you look at the results after every tour display and you look at all of the voting, it's not that extreme party platform that we're seeing. They're all voting at younger stages or for restrictions, and they're recognizing that their voice isn't being heard as it stands right now.
And I think this is a winning talking point for the pro-life movement that we can be using. Like, hey, let's use this. Do you want to write? You should have the right to vote. You should have the right to say what happens in your state when it comes to abortion. Like, it's a winning issue for us. I know after we did this poll, I sent out like a memo to the national pro-life organizations. I was like, pay attention, hey. And then I went and saw some of my friends. I was like, did you read my poll? And they're like, yeah, I saw something. And it was like that whole like not invented here syndrome of like, yeah, somebody else did something, but I was so busy with my organization. So that's one of the things I've been trying to really focus on. And we're doing a research study right now is getting all the pro-life movement on board before the results of the research study are released. So that way every organization will hopefully take those talking points and the messages and the things we learn to heart and implement them within their organization. Because I'm like, pay attention, like ding, 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 ding. This is a huge talking point that we should be using. We don't have to be afraid.
I don't think so.
About talking about reversing Roe. I think sometimes people are afraid to talk about it.
I think some might interpret this as, well, they want a vote on abortion so that they can vote for it.
Yeah.
But it's not, again, we've seen the other polling data showed us, well, they don't want abortion through all 9 months. So it is good for them to have a voice because it will start to get us closer to where we want to be.
All right. So the fourth point we're going to talk about millennials agreeing on abortion is, are you for A6? 56% of millennials oppose selling chemical abortion drugs online or dropping the physical exam requirement before administering RU46, aka toilet bowl abortions to girls. That's huge.
Yes.
And we just lost the battle in California with SB 24. And you know, they're going to try to export this to other states and try to get these toilet bowl abortions everywhere. And women are going to die. Thousands of babies are going to be killed. It's going to fundamentally change what campus health centers are actually there to do and help and promote health and healthy decisions. But what we found in California, you might be able to speak to this, is we were actually getting pro-choice students signing our petitions to the governor, to the leaders in Sacramento against SB 24, against toilet bowl abortions. How did you guys manage that?
Because it's just this common sense of we all want to be valued. And clearly with this sort of legislation, women aren't valued. We're not seen as valuable patients worth anybody's time to be taken seriously. You know, we might disagree on that underlying issue of abortion, which is fundamental, that is important. But in the meantime, like we've seen with other cases where pro-life, what would be considered pro-life laws, where they're calling for stricter restrictions on abortion facilities. Well, the pro-life movement should be for that because it's saving lives, right, of women, and we're protecting women, and we're showing we value women and their safety. And how they're rolling out RU486 is just dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, with like no regard, like
exactly,
they don't have the ability to take care of these women when it's an emergency situation. They can't give them blood transfusions on campuses. The private grant that's coming in is going to provide ultrasounds to the clinics, but like these are not centers that are open 24/7 to take care of women who are bleeding out.
It's scary. And at first, I can't even imagine, you know, as a young woman in college and you're being told something from your campus center, or you're being told something from a doctor, yeah, this is okay, take this home or do this online. I think that initial, oh yeah, this seems like a great idea is there, but we're going to start hearing stories.
Yeah. I mean, it's
more
all about
and
access.
more and more. Yes.
It's all about access. I mean, we saw that with Home Women's Health in 2013, the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court literally said, well, access to abortion is more important than the safety. These safety procedures and protocols that the state of Texas had implemented on abortion facilities.
Yes, access no matter what harm we're going to put women through. That's really
And the
scary.
Supreme Court's going to be redeciding that this year.
Yes, that's exciting.
With the Louisiana case. So, and it's a little bit different makeup. So the political left is very worried about that. Okay, so the last point where we found that millennials, what they agree on when it comes to abortion was that by a 3-to-1 margin, so 48% to 17%, millennials said they preferred that their tax dollars went to federally qualified health centers rather than the abortion clinic, Planned Parenthood. 3-to-1 margin.
And I think that goes back to everything that we said about Planned Parenthood. When you start to look at, one of my favorite displays was the We Don't Need Planned Parenthood tour. It compared Planned Parenthood services to FQHCs, and really this generation just wasn't aware of FQHCs. You know, they probably went
that's what
to
we did in
them.
the poll, because we said, this is what an FQHC is, and this is what they provide. Now, do you...
Yes, exactly. Making students aware, making millennials aware what is available at these other centers. And so we actually had the list, right? So you'd have Planned Parenthood's list, and it was about yay big. Had like 5 or 6 things on it. And then you had the federally qualified health center list, took up the whole banner all the way to the bottom. And it showed that they took care of families. They had pediatric care. And if there was a service that they didn't have at one particular building, it was in their policy as an FQHC that they would provide transportation to the next center that did.
And they're legally mandated to help you. If you don't have transportation, they have to help you get transportation.
I mean, that's the health care that the left of center want, right? That signed me up. That's it. That's crazy. So it's exciting to see that we want our dollars there.
Yeah, and we saw earlier when we talked about the limits, one of the limits was they don't want taxpayer dollars using it for abortions. Now, I mean,
so NFQHCs do not perform abortions.
They do not. They do not perform. They will refer to abortion facilities, which is a challenge. I think they prefer. Do they refer?
They might. I don't know.
No, wait. I don't know. They don't refer, but they don't. I don't think they talk about it at all. Now, I do know that the controversy in the pro-life movement is FQHCs will prescribe contraception.
Yes, that's
and so that's why obviously we prefer a pro-life medical center over an FQHC, but I'll take an FQHC any day of the week over Planned Parenthood. And we're still hopefully getting the word out. There was the Today Show on NBC like 2 weeks ago had this fantastic show about
the birth control one.
Yeah, how birth control is altering women's brains. And I was like, wait a minute, I feel like we've been saying this for like 20 years, but no one's been paying attention. But it was shocking. Okay, talking about liberals, it was shocking because the researcher came out and said, I'm for women's rights, and then she made some bullshit argument.
There was a ton of disclaimers before she
made this bullshit
it.
disclaimer like, I use birth control and birth control allowed me to be a doctor. It was like some once again, buying into the myths of Roe, that women have to have, special access to special surgery and special chemicals that can be carcinogenic in order to live our lives we see fit because we're not, worthy otherwise. But anyway, so she gives this disclaimer. Then she goes and talks about all these bad things hormonal birth control does. And then the woman, I don't know who she was she was an African-American woman. She was sitting in the middle. I don't know her name. I don't watch TV, so I wouldn't know her name.
Watched that clip.
But then she was like, but we're not saying birth control is bad because birth control has been great.
God forbid.
But she just said it's altering our brains and the decisions that we're making. Like we're choosing different partners and different spouses. But we're so wedded to this idea that women have to have birth control.
It's as if we've been trained from the beginning.
But she had the facts in front of her. That's why I was like, I want to shake you because you had the facts in front of you, but you're still so wedded to this ideology that you couldn't let it go.
And I think it's even harder in the medical community because they're taught that, in their classes in their schools and, that it's all part of that patient care. And so I think they're scared to unlock themselves from that. I know just as common citizen, you were the one who changed my mind about birth control. Hearing you talk.
Oh, cool.
Yes, years and years ago, I heard you say a comment because I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm from a community where it just wasn't really talked about, and I used birth control early on in our marriage because I didn't know any better. And then I heard you talk, and you said, what's with, I think probably a crazy liberal, what's with all these crazy, like wanting their hormone-free milk and they take the hormone pill, and that it clicked, and I was like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like, why do I take this? And then I didn't know that they caused early abortions. I just didn't know.
Yeah. No,
my
it's
heart
not.
was broken over it. And it was a black and white. Went home, told my husband, so guess what? We have some changes
Now
to
you're
make.
Lucy.
I know. Well, I used natural family planning when
Yeah.
somebody told me what it was. I didn't know.
Okay, we need a whole episode.
We need a whole
on this.
episode on that.
I
Yes.
know, no. So you're Protestant, you're non-Catholic Christian.
exactly.
You're a minister, actually.
Yep.
In what church?
So Church of the Nazarene.
Okay, Church of the Nazarene. So I was raised in a non-denominational Protestant home, and I converted to Catholicism. Some people know. But it's been fascinating because I have this discussion, and like nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
And like it never came up in my church.
No. I've given so many talks on this in either my church or churches like mine and youth groups. And I mean, I've had women in the church, I've had pastors' wives approach me after saying, I had no idea I went off of this.
I know. It's just like, why isn't the Protestant Church in America even talking about this issue?
I don't know, but that's one of my many missions.
We can ethically clone ourselves.
Yes.
I would talk about that. I would also talk about IVF within the Protestant Church because that's another thing that like
huge.
All of these couples are using IVF. They want to have families, love it, are using IVF, and I'm like, do you know what happens in IVF? Like how many embryos were created and probably destroyed? Like, have you had? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, you know,
they
and
pay so much money for
these are
procedures.
Pro-lifers. These are people who like vote pro-life. They're like Trump all the way. And then I'm like,
and just like me, they didn't know. You don't know what you don't know, and then somebody shows it to you, and you just feel duped. For years that your doctor wouldn't tell you this, that your medical professionals in your life wouldn't value you enough as a patient to really tell you the whole truth.
It's true. Okay, so before we end the show, I need to have you come back. But before we end the show, what are your top things that you have found that convert? I know I didn't prepare you
That's
for this.
all right.
Like that convert students on campus that you can kind of go through the dialogue to our listeners, to our viewers. So hopefully if they find themselves in a similar discussion, they can recall their Michele Hendrickson.
I really wish it were like one key phrase, right?
I know.
One thing.
There's
It's
no
never that
silver
way.
bullet.
It's just
There's no
not a
silver
thing.
bullet to go through
But
it.
the biggest advice I could give you is to listen, ask questions, and find common ground. Those are my 3 dialogue principles I live by. And you're not going to have a successful conversation. You're not going to convert anybody if you don't listen, ask questions, and find common ground. Those are key because people are complicated. They have so many reasons why they're for abortion, and they ping pong in the conversation.
And they do. They go back and forth.
Yes.
It's like rape, health of the mother,
circumstances, not a baby, yes, a baby. They'll ping pong. And it's so frustrating sometimes as a pro-life person because you've studied it. You've read all the books. You're listening to this podcast right now. Like you care so much and you know what all your answers are. But most likely that person you're talking to, they really haven't studied. They really haven't read all the books. You're just having conversation, maybe Thanksgiving this year, Christmas, right? That's a good time to talk about this. Or for us on college campus, we have to remember this student, it just got out of class and they're probably trying to head to lunch and they did not anticipate a discussion about abortion. And we have to remember that and just really help them dig deep to figure out for themselves why they support abortion. And that's where all of those questions come from. So once you start to, first of all, figure out their viewpoint, then you can start to unpack all of your apologetics and all of your, okay, I need to address this for this person. And it could just be awareness. And they need to see that there is a living human being in the womb and what abortion really does. Sometimes that's it. Other times it's so layered and they may know someone who had an abortion. And you can tell them the truth of abortion all you want, but their mom still had one, but their sister still had one. And so what do you do with that? Like you're telling them their parents were wrong, that their family was wrong. And that's heavy. And you have to give them time to wrestle with that. They're not going to shake your hand in that conversation and say, you got me on pro-life now, right? They're going to go home and think about it though. Yeah. They're going to go home and have a lot to really wrestle with. And that's a key shift. So what we do at Students for Life with our displays, we'll put the viewpoints on a scale from 1 to 6. Okay. And so 6 being like, they come up to you with the most extreme view on abortion, pro-abortion, all 9 months for any reason. And 1 being that very pro-life, against abortion for all reasons. And then we go ahead and define, the in-between numbers for limitations based on pain or development or exceptions, right? Life of the mother. And we make sure to ask really good questions so we get their viewpoint coming into it. Hey, what are your thoughts about legal abortion? We do all of our really great questions in common ground. And then we make sure at the end to ask, so what are your thoughts about abortion now? And we'll often hear that person just self-reflecting, it's a lot different than what I thought before. I really need to think about this or that. And so we've taken them from that 6 position to maybe at least a 4.
Yeah.
And we need to celebrate that.
That's a win.
That's huge.
I think that's hard too for younger pro-life leaders. Like when you first get in this movement, you feel like everyone's against you. You're starting a Students for Life group, and your administration might not want to. You might lose some friends, and so it sometimes can be hard because you want you want to see a baby saved right away. You want someone to be like, you're all right. Like I've been all wrong, and it's really hard to get someone to say that because they have to admit to you that they were wrong.
They're putting down their worldview. Yeah. They're flipping at 180. I mean, I could probably count on one hand how many conversations ended with a handshake from a 6 to a 1. Yeah. In a moment, in a conversation that.
Yeah, and that's why I think that's what we tell with our student leaders. Like, you have to think of it as a scale, and moving them down that scale is a victory. And even in your personal life, when you're talking to a friend or a family member, someone in your church or parish, you want to move them down that scale, and you've planted that seed, right? So that next time they have the conversation,
and they'll come back, because that's a beautiful thing about our Students for Life groups. For regional coordinators and myself, we'll go on college campuses one day with a display. And then we might not see this group again until next semester, but this group is on campus every week, and they're telling stories of, that student who came up to them, they were, pro-abortion, and they didn't change their mind in the middle of that display, but over the course of the semester, those interactions with the students, and then they're having them sign the petitions or join the club. It takes time.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. We have this talk initiative this year. I kind of came up with this creative goal, this crazy goal this summer. We want to have 250,000 conversations this year with students about abortion. And the goal is I want to see at least half conversions. We had 50% of the students we met last semester on our Planned Parenthood. What was it called?
Over 50% conversion rate on We Don't Trust Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, we don't trust Planned Parenthood.
That was the essential question. Do you trust Planned Parenthood? They come up to you, tell you yes. All you have to do is walk them through the truth, and nope, I'm not okay with that.
The truth is your best weapon. And so you can convert and you can change minds. But I think you have to follow Michelle's
dialogue principles 100% of the way.
That's right. So what are they again?
So you're going to listen. You're going to ask questions. Already the first one I lost her. Listen, ask good questions, and find common ground. Yep. That's huge. Pausing the conversation and celebrating moments you agree. There was one time I was at University of Pittsburgh, and the only thing I could agree on with this guy was almond milk and how much it didn't replace creamer and coffee, because we're both vegetarians, right? And we both gave up milk. And so we replaced our milk and our creamer and our coffee with almond milk, and we just agreed it didn't quite do it for us, but we were committed to the choice of almond milk. And that was the only thing that we could celebrate in that conversation, but it humanized each other, right?
And you weren't this big bad person.
Right.
Because one of our models at Students for Life is belong, believe, behave, BBB. Yes. And it's until someone feels like they belong, someone likes you as a person, you're not going to be a real great evangelizer. If they think you're a jerk and an asshole,
would you want to talk to you?
Yeah, they're probably not going to want to talk to you. That's something I struggle with on the campuses, because I'll give my speech and then the Q&A, and it's like,
were you listening?
Yeah, and then someone will come up and be like, rah, 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 and then I'll be like a smart ass back to them sometimes, and it's like, well, that probably wasn't the best dialogue tool, but I really, but my intention there was it was a different format. Yeah. I'm not going to convert that person. They came up with a loaded question, they're shaking, they're angry. I'm really trying to point out to the audience the illogical position of this person, and I've had some really awesome conversions I can see happening. I wish there was a GoPro on me filming the audience, because the crazier they are and the way I respond and I can point out the illogical position, it actually changes minds there in the audience.
Oh, yes. That's important to think
but it's a different tactic than, and we always do, sometimes we do videos of me responding, and I'm like, this is really great and it's really fun to watch. But it's not the best way to convert one-on-one conversation at campus.
Two different
Don't use what I say to be your tool if you're on one-on-one conversation. Yeah. And I think that's a challenge you've probably have experienced in the modern conservative movement, the kind of the trend has been these like short videos.
These quippy, change my mind, and which are great. You know,
they're fun to watch.
Yeah,
you
they're
laugh.
fun to watch. But the real deal when you're out on a college campus is a 20, 30-minute conversation where you're getting to know that person if you want to see real conversion.
Yeah, and I think conservative donors and supporters, like they like that stuff, but then it's like that's not really how you convert in a one-on-one way.
It's complicated.
It makes entertaining TV for you and YouTube for you, but it's not really how it happens. And it's more of a sausage making process, I feel like. on
I don't know. Vegetarian's not following you there. Give me like an equivalent.
I don't know.
All right, forget it.
Like
making almond milk and grinding.
Impossible. Making like a meatless burger. You got
Okay,
all
there
that crap in the thing, right? You don't really know what's in it, but one tastes good. Okay. So hey, Michele, thanks for joining us today. We'll have you on again. Thanks for tuning into Explicitly Pro-Life this week. Make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, anywhere where you get your podcasts. Make sure you spread the message about this podcast, share it around, get your friends listening. Hopefully, we provided some good talking points for you, some good things to think about. Some hope. We are winning. Millennials do agree with us when it comes to abortion. And we'll check you next week. Bye, guys.